We have two sessions today. We'll start with the first session, the impact of AI on language learning, diverse perspectives on and strategic implication, led by Professor Knud Berthelsen.
Thank you very much. So I wanted to start today with this visualization here because I just like things to be visual. I generated this using AI, technically the new GPT-4o image generator yesterday. And I said that I wanted a mosaic that illustrated the impact of AI on language learning, and that included the text, the impact of AI on language learning, right? So they say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? But in reality, this is about 2 million pixels, right? So it's about 2 million pixels, and then that breaks down into about 50 million ones and zeros from the bits for the colors, right? And what I want you to think about is the fact that AI, and I'm not talking about like weird future AI, but stuff we already have, right, can understand, manipulate, and generate any combination of ones and zeros, right? So to it, this is just a whole bunch of like 50 million or so ones and zeros, right? My text that I wrote, which was basically what I just said to you, like make me an image, da 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 da, right? It made that into little tokens. It understood what I wanted. It made this. I could also do it reverse. I could give it this image and have it describe it, and it will do so, right? So what else do we know if that's digital these days? Well, I'm currently being recorded, right? So my voice, everything I'm saying, that's also ones and zeros, right? So I don't want to get into sort of too much of a detail about which tool to do what, how, and all that stuff. And Blaine will do a little bit more of that. I just want everyone to keep in mind that there are AI tools out there already, many of them, that will be able to understand all text, images, or audio, right? And that similarly can translate between these formats and different languages, right? And give outputs as text, images, and audio, right? And I believe these things will have sort of significant impact on language learning. So let's see, do I have the, oops, your microphone, can I have the mouse? This, oh, here we go. It was too far away. Okay, so all the images here, of course, are generated. One of the things that I think is a significant impact of AI on language learning is that it actually makes it harder to learn new languages if you are an unmotivated student, right? And it makes it harder to teach if you are the educator teaching unmotivated students, right? But if you are motivated, it's a fantastic tool that you can use to learn languages much easier, faster, better, etc. And especially combined with experienced educators who can use these tools, everyone should be able to learn languages better. I just have a quick example here. Let's see if the mouse will work over here. Yes. This guy here is just someone who's tinkering. And can you confirm that we have sound on this plane? Let's see here.
D'accord, je peux vous aider avec. Avez-vous des mots OU, des phrases spécifiques en Tellart sur les.
I guess at the beginning.
Bonjour, comment puis-je vous aider aujourd'hui?
Bonjour, je veux pratiquer la prononciation.
D'accord, je peux vous aider avec. Avez-vous des mots OU, des phrases spécifiques en Tellart sur lesquelles vous aimeriez vous concentrer?
How about a bientôt?
D'accord. Comment prononceriez-vous à bientôt?
A bientôt.
Très bien, essayez encore une fois. La prononciation correcte est à bientôt. Pouvez-vous essayer?
A bientôt.
C'est mieux, mais faites attention à la liaison entre à et bientôt. On doit dire à bientôt. Essayez de nouveau.
A bientôt.
Très bien, c'est presque parfait. Encore une fois, et je pense que vous l'aurez.
I don't think it was close to perfect, but I appreciate it.
Très bien. Voulez-vous essayer une autre phrase?
Non, ça fait maintenant. Merci.
Je vois. On va prendre notre temps.
Ok.
Avez-vous une autre phrase que vous voudriez essayer? Au U, préférez-vous que j'en choisisse une pour vous?
À bientôt.
No. So that's the thing. This guy is not a language learner. He's just a tinkerer who's playing around with a new AI model. He has written 90 lines of code to integrate an actual sort of third-party LLM to make little tools for himself. And to test it, he was like, I guess I'll try language. Like it's an afterthought, right? He's just like, he made this little thing and he figured one way to test it would be to see if it could help him with his pretty bad, even I could hear French pronunciation, right? So 90 lines of code. This is just from an amateur, right? So you can imagine anything that actually like a company that is involved with this, specifically language, teaching and things like that, or just the big tech companies that have all the built-in functions, right? So that was like a little demonstration of something that, let's see, that I did not do myself, but I found it interesting when I was working on this. But we're going to do an example now of how I work with Claude across languages to prepare this presentation here. So Claude, I'm going to click in here and then here. Okay, do I need to make this bigger, by the way? Because I think I can. Is that better? There we go. Okay. Here's what I did was the starting point. I took a picture with my phone of this, right? So the starting point here is not text. The starting point is an image, and it's hidden because it's shared. But this is what I said. I need this translated to Norwegian, German, and French. Norwegian because I am Norwegian, so it's my language, and French and German because I am not very good at it, but I can to some degree see if it makes some sense or not, right? So here's what I got first. And there's some feedback. Can you turn off your microphone? Is it the one you have on, or is the other one? Oh, I can scoot it. As long as the mouse still works. Okay. So you have seen this, and if not, it's over here, and it says, the impact of AI on language learning, diverse perspectives and strategic implications, etc. Right? So the first thing we did here, let's see what I'm look here. I said I wanted it in Norwegian, German, and French. This is its thinking, by the way. It shows me how it's thinking to do this. And it gave me this. So here we have it in Norwegian, right? German, and French. Then I noticed it said it referred to AI as AI, but most Norwegians would say KI for kunstig intelligens. So I said, yeah, Norwegian's more likely to use AI or KI. And it's like, oh, yeah, no, you're right. So it updated, right? Then I noticed, sorry, it's a little hard to see this. I noticed then that the description of the session here was actually not the one I had written and submitted because there were some edits to make it fit into other things, right? So I said, this is what I actually sent. Please compare with it. And then I copied and pasted, right? So again, it scrutinized differences between them, as you can see here. And said, oh, you're right. There are differences. These are the differences, right? And then it's also very helpful, because this is Claude, and Claude's always helpful. Would you like me to create new translations based on your original text instead? Right? I was like, yeah, yes, please. Right? So here we go. So now we have this one, Norwegian, German, and French. All right. Now, translation is not just like that easy, right? I mean, this was not, I read it, it's like, it's not perfect, right? So I said, let's focus on the perfect Norwegian version, right? Because some of your translations seem to not fully consider the context, translate some things with more focus on individual words and full sentences and intent. So analyze this and comment before presenting the new and improved translations. So it does that. Notice it now speaks, right, no, it's still English. It's going to switch to Norwegian at some point, right? So here we have the new Norwegian version, and also it explains how it is better. Terminology improvements, more natural phrasing, etc., better conceptual understanding. And I say, okay, this is fire. Please do the same process for the French and German. Right? So now we have this one here, der Einfluss der künstlichen Intelligenz auf das Sprachenlernen, etc. And the French one here. And we don't have time for those of you who are experts in this to fully sort of read through these, but I think you'll find that they are better. Right? And I said, this is interesting. So now please assume the role of a Norwegian language instructor and grade the 2 most recent Norwegian translations, including pointing out any issues or weaknesses, but also giving praise if something is particularly well translated. So now it does this. Now it switches to Norwegian, right? So it's evaluating it and telling me about it in Norwegian. And I can tell you that, yeah, this is good. I said, thank you. Please translate that to English so that my colleagues can understand it. And here now you can see this is its assessment sort of its own work here, playing the different part, right? And this is really good stuff, right? I mean, like this one here, this stoler på A for snarveier is a direct translation that lacks idiomatic flow. And then all these things are just absolutely on point. And I have it graded. We get an A-, significant improvement for that one there, right? So that was just one tool. Claude I really like Claude, it's my favorite, but ChatGPT, for example, could do the same thing, right? Now, as soon as we started talking about doing this whole event, I started thinking about myself and language, and I would like to learn more Latin. So I set up a ChatGPT daily task to give me a new Latin word or phrase every day. I went back and forth a couple of times. Let's see if I can find. Sorry for turning my back on you, but if I could get to the actual. I guess we're going to scroll for a long time here then. Okay, so every day, let's see. Here we go. I get a new one. So here, I don't know, Aquila non capit muscas. The eagle does not catch flies. And it gives me the meaning and the context. So you get some etymology, literal translation, famous usage, comparison, influence, historical, philosophical context, because I'm interested in these things. And then I told it to, at the end of each message, give me a list of all the ones we've talked about so far. So here we have all the previously taught phrases, right? So we did this, and I had it going for a while. Of course, at this point, I'm not looking at it every day, right? I just it's just one more thing. So I went in last week or whatever when I was preparing this talk. I went in, I was going to try to find here. There you go. I went and said, okay, let me see how I can go further with this, right? So I said, I'm not always sure how to pronounce the C in Latin words, so use the list of previously taught phrases to give me examples of differences if there are any. I just typically just consider it a K sound, right? Here's the twist. I had not noticed, but for some reason, I was no longer dealing with the best ChatGPT model. It had changed to an inferior model, one of the minis, can't remember which one, 4 mini or whatever it was. So it gave me this answer that is wrong. Right? Now, I spotted this because I actually pay attention to these things and focus on AI, but a normal student would not. A normal student would at this point be convinced that this is true, right? And it's pretty bad. It's not just a little wrong, it's a lot of wrong, right? For example, in some of these, it refers to how to pronounce it. Well, look at this. Tempus fugit. C before E is also pronounced as CH here. Wait, what? There's not even a C in here, right? This is does not pass the laugh test, right? But you can imagine how some students would be like, okay, I got this, right? And that's one of the reasons that I think for unmotivated students, this is not helping. This is hurting, right? So luckily I caught it. I switched to 4.5, the newest and smartest version. I said, I'm confused by the last output here. Some of the examples don't even include a C. Please consider my last prompts and give me what I actually need that is correct. And it's you're right to be confused. My previous response contained mistakes, which is kind of funny because it tells me that it didn't say the other LLM's previous response. It's still mine because it's in the same text like it feels like it has the responsibility for all this. It's kind of interesting. So now it gives me, and again, I don't know if this is correct. I'm assuming someone in this room can tell me if this is correct. But it says like, this is how you pronounce it in Latin. And I'm like, oh, interesting. And then I noticed this, it said common misconception, important clarification. It's like a lot of people do this because of Italian. I was like, oh, interesting. So now I say, that makes so much sense. Help me understand why Italian developed this way from the original Latin, now that we're on the topic, right? Because I'm interested in that, right? So here I get a whole little story of going classical Latin to vulgar Latin, sound changes, why it occurred. I genuinely found this to be interesting, right? So I read it. Gives me a summary at the bottom, and I'm like, this, now that we're on this topic, I'm way down the rabbit hole here, clearly, right? So I'm like, as a Norwegian who works in English, I'm even more confused because so many names, etc., from ancient Rome that I'm interested in are discussed in some kind of anglicized version. Does that make sense? Can you give me some examples and perhaps offer me some advice to help me understand when to, use expect what? So I'm rambling, right? I mean, if someone came into your office hour and said like that, you would be like, okay, let's break it down, right? But this is not a problem. It's like, yeah, that's completely understandable as a Norwegian speaker working in English, blah, 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 right? And then it gives me some examples and tell me why, and some differences with Norwegian, how to use it, general rule of thumb for me, right? So personalization specifically for this weird Norwegian here, right? A little reference table, and we got all this stuff, and I can go on and on, but I did not, luckily, and I will not. But there we go. Now we're to ChatGPT, right? Now, of course, I got really fascinated. So I've been listening lately to this podcast series. It's actually from a BBC4 radio show. It's called Natalie Haynes Stands Up for the Classics. And this person is a stand-up comedian / famous author of books about women in ancient Greece. And she's sort of going through all these different original texts and authors from back in the day and saying funny things about them. And she said this one thing. She said that there was one of them, there was an old poem from when she learned, and I don't know what's going on with sound here. When she learned in school, there was this poem, and it was so dirty that when she tried to look up the Latin words in the dictionary, the physical large dictionary they had at, I think, Oxford, it wouldn't translate it to English. It just showed the Greek. So she was like, that's not helpful. So then she went to the Greek, and that just showed the Latin. All right. And I was like, okay, that reminds me like when, as a kid growing up in a small town in Norway, and my only source of information was the physical books they had at the little library. I was like, sometimes I forget. It used to be that we couldn't access all information. All right. So I'm thinking, okay, what's this funny? Let me see what I can do about this. I'm going to find out. Let's use an AI that is sort of famously talking about how it is not filtered or censored. So I'm using Grok from X/Twitter/Musk, right? Because it has no filters, right? And I'm just giving it some content here. And also I need to give a content warning. There are very, very vulgar words coming up, but I kept them in other languages than English. So at least only some of you will be offended. So I said what I just said, like, look, she mentioned this poet and it was very vulgar. Who is this, right? And it's like, oh, it's Catullus, right? Which actually it wasn't, it was some other one. I can't remember who it was, but I'm like, sure, I'll go with this. Carmen 16, right? So here I said, please give it to me in the original language. And it does, here it is in its original language. Again, as we established, I have no clue what that means because I don't read Latin. So I said, how about Norwegian? Okay, any Norwegian speakers here? Good, because this is pretty rough. But it is accurate, and I'd say somewhat entertaining. I'm pretty impressed, actually. And then it explains it in Norwegian now, since it's established that I'm Norwegian. It's like, let's talk about this in Norwegian. So I'm like, okay, let's take this further. Which of Tolkien's languages would this be most entertaining in? Translate to that and also Klingon. So first we have a discussion about Tolkien's languages. And it decided that Sindarin was the most entertaining one. So here we have terrible words in that language. And I think it was, yeah, some of them come in English here too, sorry. And then also in Klingon, which I guess is the more natural sort of outlet for this kind of language, with a line-by-line explanation. So then I'm like, was Catullus the first gangster rapper, right? Is that where this whole thing comes from? And it's like, yeah, it is, because here's some similarities and differences. We should talk about this. You could totally, this is true. I'm like, okay, can you transform Carmen 16 into a modern diss track? And it's like, absolutely, here we go. So, yo, Aurelius Furious, you think you're slick? You're talking trash about my poems, but you don't know the trick. You read my lines, think I'm soft, think I'm tame, but I'm about to drop some truth and put you both to shame. And I decided to not take this any further. But this is an interesting, intelligent discussion about the topic that I'm certainly enjoying, and I can think of some students that might as well, right? Let's see. So these things, I'm all doing these using state-of-the-art AI tools from my computer connected to our very fast internet here, right? But everything that I was able to do from my computer, you can do from your smartphone. And very soon, everyone can do it not just from their phones, their smartphones, but their smartwatches, their smart glasses, and also their earpods, right? And it doesn't have to be connected, right? So the latest Gemma 3 model by Google is 27 gigabytes of data and can run locally. And it will run at least 40 different languages that has been tested to have like 90-something% accuracy in translation between. And I'm not logged in here, but I did a side-by-side, which you can do by yourself. If you go to aistudio.google.com, there's a side-by-side button, and then you can pick different models, all by Google, right? So I put the latest one from yesterday, Gemini 2.5 Pro, experiential and some numbers, doesn't really matter. And then I put Gemma 3, which is the one that you can run locally on your phone and computer, and soon to be glasses and watch and stuff like that. And I asked it, I did the same thing again. Basically, I had it translate this, right? On both sides, and it looked really good, right? And for some uses, it doesn't necessarily need to be perfection, right? But you can think of like I guess Star Trek, the universal translator. I mean, basically we all have that, right? Now, to me, I think this raises some questions about the changes, let's say, in the relative value of learning and knowing languages, right? So I'd say that the demand for learning languages will be negatively affected by this, because if you think of why are people learning languages? Well, there's a whole bunch of reasons. You probably know a lot more than me, but let's say if you're moving somewhere where they speak a different language, you want to speak a different language so that you can order things in French in France, right? Or you have to for work, or you think you will open up new opportunities for you because you can work, let's say the second language is English, for example, right? And a lot of these things I think are gradually just disappearing because we'll all be able to just communicate sort of real time across languages, right? And I think the sort of the value of being a person that knows multiple languages, I think briefly, I think the value goes up because you can do things with AI. And there are a lot of surveys sort of in general now showing that sort of a human and an AI working together generally outperforms even a full team of humans without AI, right? So you can do awesome things with this, but I do think sort of gradually there might be less of a value for this. Again, the big question is why? Why do you speak this language and what do you use it for, right? So, I mean, if you are a translator, then I think you're gonna have very negative impact from this, right? And there's a new paper out just earlier this week that did the last generation. It showed how the increase in use of Google Translate, and they had broken down the data by state, led to a decrease in searches for translators on Google, and then some of these other things as well. And we can sort of see that makes sense, right? So if we all have like this thing in our pocket that can, just anything we say, but also, I mean, again, like I've traveled somewhere, I just hold up the camera, I'm like, oh, okay, I got it, right? I mean, I was in Rome in January, and I tested on a bunch of old Latin things too. I was like, wait, what does this thing say? Oh, okay, good. And it's quite spectacular what it could do, because again, it can understand any image, any video, because that's just moving images, right? Any audio. And what I think is important to understand, compared to the early AI models like ChatGPT, the original one and all that, when they first got voice functions, those were not integrated voice functions. So they were calling on tools. So it used to be that if you wanted to use, let's say, ChatGPT voice, you would speak, and a specific voice model called Whisper would transcribe that to text, give it to the model, and it would answer in text, give it to Whisper, and it would then pronounce it for you, right? So you can see if you're trying to learn a language, this is not helpful. I mean, maybe to some degree, but it certainly would not be able to pick up on how you pronounce something unless you pronounce it, if it's so wrong that it ended up as a different word, right? These new ones now, the voice is integrated, right? So the same model can have voice and text in and out, and some of them also natively images in and out. So nothing is sort of lost in translation, let's say, between the two models, right? So it can very much, it can hear what you're saying and sort of catch up on, for example, pronunciations, which, assuming we still have time, I can do a quick demo of that. But first, questions. I see one in the back here.